Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back into another edition of Jake's Takes. I am your host, Jake Masucci, and today we got another edition of the show. Today I got on my guy, Asher Smith. We're going to be talking all things college basketball, get you guys caught up. We first talk about some of the Blue Bloods, then we go into Big 12 conference, talk about contenders, pretenders, then we move into ACC, same thing, and then SEC, same thing. So super fun podcast. Get a little mid-major spotlight as well. We want to focus on Miami, Ohio, because it's been awesome. It's an awesome story in college basketball, and just I love this podcast. Always great bringing on Asher right before March to get you guys ready for everything going on. So without further ado, I'm going to cue the music. All right. Welcome back into another edition of Jake's Takes, and I am joined by my guy, Asher Smith. Asher, college basketball. We are like in the prime time, man. It's been so much fun so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It really has. Glad to be back on. Excited to talk some more hoops. Can't believe we're 2 weeks from March. That just feels exciting.
I know. I love this podcast because it's like getting everybody ready for March, and it's getting everybody ready for like conference tournament time and all the stuff that you need to know. Super excited for this. Let's dive right in. Let's talk about the Blue Bloods a little bit. So when I was texting you, planning it, I kind of listed Duke, UConn, UNC, Kansas, Kentucky. And then we can go Michigan State. We've talked about Big Ten a lot, so if you want to touch on them, go ahead. But as I list those teams, who are the teams that kind of stick out to you?
Yeah, I think we were chatting and we said like the Blue Bloods are a great, value on how college basketball is performing in a certain year, right? Certain times we've seen maybe a couple Blue Bloods take over or just be a little more dominant than some in rebuilding. This year and like a couple years past have shown they're all performing well, right? They've all figured it out. They've adjusted to this new landscape of college basketball. They've been able to recruit the same way we know Blue Bloods can recruit. They've been able to transfer portal now, right, with the best of them. And that translates to winning games. So I think that everyone can find themselves happy with how college basketball is going based on the fact that the Blue Bloods are winning, right? Even if it's more fun to cheer against them, when these teams are winning, we know that it's going to be a great college basketball season. So I was really happy with two teams in particular, but first Kansas in the way that they responded to the beginning of the year. I wasn't going to write Kansas out ever, but the way the Big 12 has been, which you and I will get into, I did not think Kansas was going to come out on top this year. They had a couple things not going for them right early in just terms of who they're going to define as their shooter when Darren Peterson doesn't want to play, right? They were dealing with some defensive issues early with just teams being able to run on them and just gave up a couple losses that we saw as character building, but others might have seen as, this is a sign that it's not Kansas's year. They've responded by winning huge games, beating Arizona, jumping back into that top 10, right? And in my mind, based on the last time I saw them play at home, being the hardest opponent in the Big 12 that you can go on the road and see, which is pretty, large to say because they are a loaded conference, right? And there's probably 6 home courts you don't want to run into. Kansas is back in terms of the toughest out for some of these top opponents. And that's why the Big 12 is probably as balanced as it's been, is because teams like Kansas, Iowa State, other Big 12s have been able to knock down those early risers in Arizona and Houston, right? Kind of leveling out the playing field. So I'd say Kansas. Obviously, I'm a Darren Peterson fan. I think he's the reason that they could go to the Final Four. I don't know if he's going to be, right? It's up to him, up to their coaching staff and how they use him. I don't necessarily blame him for resting here and there, but I do think, now we've gotten into the time in college basketball where he needs to really show out, right? And be that 20-point a game scorer that he can be. But future buying stock in Kansas this season, I think they're going to be very strong.
Yeah. Kansas is really an interesting team because like 1 minute Peterson's playing and then 1 minute it's not. And it's just
Right.
two completely different teams. You saw it in the Arizona game where he doesn't play. There's more ball movement. They're getting it to two sides. They're figuring it out. Melvin Council's hitting shots out of nowhere. Flory Badunga's having a fantastic game. And then Trey White is fantastic for them as well. And then with Peterson, it's more like ball stoppy, but it's in a good way because Peterson's that good. You know, he's when Peterson plays, he's averaging 19.8 points a game, pretty much 20 a game. And he's just being shooting the lights out, you know? So it's like kind of two different styles. So it's hard to like measure where Kansas is, especially compared to some of the Big 12 teams that we'll get into because of how stacked the conference is. So Kansas is definitely like a really interesting. I'd say the one that kind of sticks out to me is one nobody's talking about in UConn. You know, UConn just continues to be UConn. You know, they're always winning all these games. They're sitting at 24-2 right now. And you know, like they've just been really good, you know, really steady, really good. And there's a lot about them where you're looking at them and it's like, there's a couple things I don't like. They turn over the ball a lot. It's something Dan Hurley's really like griped on. And he's someone that's always like, you know, in the media and stuff and talks a crazy talk. So like when he's griping on turnovers, especially with an experienced group, that's not really the greatest sign you want to see. And then another thing that I saw was really the free throw shooting for them. They're sitting like in the low 70% range for free throws. That would be something to look out for in March. But overall with UConn, like they're really showing like how experienced they are. And it's kind of like the offense of old, where they're really like it's motion all over the place. You're seeing Caravan hit threes. You're seeing them be able to get post touches into Reed, and Reed's been excellent. When they're healthy, they're just a really, really good team. And then being able to add Braylon Mullins to their team, he just adds a great shooting depth for them. I really like UConn because of the experience and because of the coaching. They know how to get through the tournament and they know how to do that. And I don't think that they should be slept on as much as they are. It's part of the Big East, you know, like there's not that many Big East teams that we should be excited about. But looking at UConn, I've been very pleased with what I've been seeing from them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the good thing about the blue bloods or even just the top teams in college basketball these days is they all play each other, right? They all in
Mhm.
November, they make sure that they see each other and get these March looks, as we call them, right? These top tier games early so that their players are ready for it, right? And now as the season shapes out, certain conferences will be tougher than others, right? So I think what UConn and maybe Duke and North Carolina have that some of the other blue bloods don't is really a chance to rise here at the end of their season, take care of business against, teams that they're better than, even if they are ranked matchups, tough environments, right? Take care of business here, win your conference, maybe win your tournament, come in with a high seed, something that the other blue bloods might get beaten up trying to do, right? Take care of business now because you already played those tough games. You already know what it's like to walk into Gonzaga and to walk into Kentucky and all these other teams, Michigan State, that you schedule because you have these agreements with these teams. Take care of business in your own conference. We know that you're the best. You've had a great year. Go win that conference, get a good seed. I think that, the Final Four is definitely in play for a Duke, a UConn, especially a Kansas if they can, beat some of these other teams. So that's what I would probably say that about UConn is they have the best path forward of these blue bloods just because of, what they've given themselves in the Big East.
Out of these teams, who are you most thinking, okay, this is a Final Four lock?
I'd have to say after all the analysis I was able to do, after just the, watching which team has it, right? Clearly these teams have it, but after the analysis of it, I think Duke is clearly the Final
Mhm.
Four team that I would say is the one I would put my money on. Even if, the loss to North Carolina was alarming, right? That's a big game. One of the first big games they saw, in a while, maybe since Michigan State. Um, the fact that they're top 10 in both offense and defense at this point in the year just really shows how they have taken care of their own they could take care of themselves, right? How they prepared themselves in practice in games that people might overlook, right? They're not letting something slip. They're not winning with just offense on some days and just defense on some. They're winning with both all the time. And that's something we saw John Shire do the last few years that people were saying, okay, we'll see how this works in the tournament. And he responds with, a Elite Eight run, a Final Four run, getting as far as he can with the best players. Now he's ready to get over that hump. I think that, coach experience plus how these players have performed, I would put Duke as my number one of this group of teams.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Duke's been awesome this year, and as we'll get into, like the clear spearhead of the ACC. But let's start with the Big 12, because I think the Big 12 is probably the most exciting conference to kind of get into when you're talking about contenders and pretenders. So give me like your analysis. I wrote down 5 teams that I really love in the Big 12. So talk to me about the teams that just stand out to you as a contender or a pretender.
Yeah, I think that a misconception with the Big 12 is that they're, all equally ranked, so they're beating each other up. They don't have any top heavy hitters. Like, I think that's totally wrong. I think they have, like you said, 5 to 6 teams that are better than some some conferences' top teams, right?
Mhm.
I think you have 6 teams that could go into the ACC, the SEC, even the Big Ten, and finish top 3, no problem. Like, these are very loaded teams, and they're going to perform very well in March. The ones that I've liked the most, I'd say Arizona and Houston are clearly, teams that I'm following intently. Um, what I liked most about Arizona at the beginning was how balanced they played. They were able to beat, teams of high caliber by 40 points plus, right? It wasn't like they were just skating by on some of their better players performing. They had an entire team, depth encompassing of what they were trying to do. But what I've really liked is that they've evolved with this recent strength of schedule increase, right? I think that we've seen certain players maybe come off the bench or come out of the woodworks that, weren't really showing at the beginning because they didn't really need them to, right? They've got 5 players averaging 10 points a game. So just off the bat, you have your starters performing like they should. Their next 2 or 3 guys off the bench are all people that have put up 10 plus in one of the last 3 games, right? So when somebody might be dipping for you, one of your starters might be dipping, you have people coming off the bench that can easily fill a role. And that's important because these big teams get tired, right? They get beat up. This is a long season and they've been performing as the #1 team in the country. So you need players off the bench that can perform. And I think Arizona has one of the deeper teams, right? Maybe guys that you don't even hear about on draft boards that are putting up very solid role numbers and is the reason why you might see behind the scenes why they're performing as well as they are. Houston, similar reason. I like them because of their experience. I think that they have guards like Emmanuel Sharp and Uzan, like we talked about, that beginning of the year, I was going to put my money on them, to go far because I just know they've done it before and they have the caliber of guard play to do it. The reason I like them out more than ever is Kingston Flemings. I did not
Yeah.
expect him to play the way he has. Averaging the most points on this team is something that's very hard to do. And to do it as a freshman is incredible. Even in the games that they've lost, he's been able to take over, right? Like he finds his shot no matter how the game's flowing. People might say he finds his shot too much. It just looks pretty, hilarious. He's out there dribbling. Last night there was a clip that, was pretty ridiculous to watch as he went through 3 guys to find a wide open, 12-foot jump shot, right? So again, freshman tendencies, but the fact that he's doing that on this Houston team that's absolutely loaded is a great sign for them because they weren't counting on him to be a top 3 performer, right? They're counting on him to be an elite freshman to help them out. And now he's sitting there as their #1, points per game, but also playmaker per game. So I like Flemings a lot. I think that's what puts Houston ahead for me. But again, going down this conference, I could see both of those teams finishing outside the top 2 in the Big 12. So it really is anyone's game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. 2 other contenders I wrote down just to kind of add into it is Iowa State and Texas Tech. I mean, we saw it in the Iowa State Houston game last night. Like, what an incredible game, first of all. But
Totally.
also, the thing that was so cool was like the Iowa State atmosphere was just nuts. And you saw it in the first half. Like, I don't think I've ever seen like a team score that easily on a Houston team like that. They scored 43 points in the first half and we're just all over the place. The thing that I love about Iowa State the most is their 3-point shooting. They're 4th in the country in 3-point shooting, which is something that's absolutely huge. And you don't see a lot of the power fives like near the top in 3-point shooting. So that's something that really like is like, oh, big time green flag for me. But also the thing that's great about them is they defend too. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country as well, sitting at in KenPom. Let me pull it up. They're 6th in defense with defensive rating. So they're just a ridiculous team. And the thing that I like about them, and I thought they did a great job of, and especially in that Houston game, was how they move the ball to 2 sides. That's something that's so important in college basketball, getting the ball to each side and figuring out your right shot. And especially against a team like Houston.
They trap on the pick and rolls. What Lipsy did a fantastic job of, especially at the end of the game, was he would take just a dribble out, like just one dribble, get the two defenders to come to him, and then find the open guy in the post, and he did a fantastic job of that. I love how Lipsy played. He was one of my favorite players last year. Anthony and I would sit and watch games, and he'd be like, who is that guy? I love him. And I completely agree. He's just all over the place. He's making the play. The play of the game last night, the offensive rebound on the free throw.
Right.
He's just always, in the right spots making plays. And then the guy with the long last name, Momcilovic, I think it is. He was able to hit a couple threes. He really spreads the floor for them super well. Iowa State is just a really, really fun team. I really like them, and they proved to me that they're legit like last night. So I was really impressed with them. The other contender I had was Texas Tech. They've shown it throughout the year. Christian Anderson and JT Toppin is the two-headed monster that nobody can stop. JT Toppin is an unbelievable college big, like one of the best college bigs I've seen in a long time, since Luka Garza, since those guys. Like, please compare him to those guys because that's how good he is, And then Christian Anderson, my gosh, just the presence in the pick and roll. It's just beautiful. He's a very small guard, so like if you're looking at NBA draft, it's a little bit tougher for me to like put him like high, but like his ability to do stuff off the pick and roll. He's averaging 9 assists a game. I think he's second in the country behind Fears. And then just a ridiculous scorer. When those two play together, it just flows so nicely. And you can see it's tough for these good teams to compete with that. They beat Arizona. They beat Houston, I think, early in the season. They've beaten these teams. And Texas Tech, to me, is just really impressive. I love their coach. They defend super hard. So those would be the other contenders. I want to talk about Arizona a little bit, okay? I am a little hesitant on Arizona.
Okay.
And the thing was for me, and they're sitting in numbers great, 11th in offense, 3rd in defense. They're fantastic numbers-wise when you look at it. The thing that concerns me here is, yes, they've had a little bit of a switch identity-wise. But that's part of the reason because Koa Pete's playing worse. Bradley's playing worse, And it's partly their style of play. They're one of the lowest teams in the country at shooting three-pointers, which that works when Koa Pete is playing at the highest level possible to score inside. That's part of the reason they got Trey Townsend last year, because he was such a great inside scorer. And we've talked about it off air, how Koa Pete is just like a tiny bit better version of Trey Townsend, like he plays exactly like him, So like when you're looking at it that way and you're looking at Arizona, it's like, okay, you guys are a great scoring team inside. You're starting to move into guard play. When you're in the tournament and you don't shoot many threes in 3-point volume, like they're one of the lowest teams in the country, and you're playing against a team that can hit a ton of threes, do I really trust you to win those games? Like those are tough. Like what if you see a good St. Louis team as an 8 seed and, they're one of the best shooting teams in the country and they hit 12 threes even, like you're going to take 12 threes. That's something that really concerns me with Arizona. They're a very good team. Like Bradley's awesome. Braden Burries is playing out of his mind. Awaka, you talked about how all of these guys have really shown up and averaging 10 points a game. I'm just a little concerned about the 3-point volume.
Absolutely. You really never want to rely on defense to win your tournament games. I think that's why they'll be projected to go to the Final Four, right? But it won't because they can shoot as well, right? It's going to be all defense. And the fact that they have the 3rd ranked defense in the Big 12 is probably enough for me to put them against anybody, including a St. Louis, right? Because they can shut you down. But defense keeps games close, right? And in March, anything can happen. So definitely agree that kind of like maybe Darren Peterson has shown here and there, or Flemings has shown, would love for them to have either Koa or someone else become maybe a late game option, right? A closer for them in these next couple of games, because they've got the hardest schedule to finish it out. So we're going to see what they're made of here. Would love to see someone step up and be that closer, because, the group of 8 can win any game, but if they're not scoring, it's up for grabs.
Yeah, for sure. I think we said on our last podcast that we get a lot of questions answered about Arizona around this time. So I'm excited to see how they improve and how they work through some of those issues. So let's move into the ACC. All right. So we talked about Duke as kind of the spearhead there. So talk to me about some of the other teams that you like out of the ACC.
Yeah, I think that North Carolina was hinging on Caleb Wilson's injury, right? Because that game against Duke was unbelievable. The fact that they were able to come back from being down against what I saw was the best team in the country at the time, come back and show their flaws, right? Put together several drives in a row of scoring while holding them to no points, to the point where you had a game-winning shot. So it's who can step up, right? Caleb Wilson
Mhm.
goes down, who can step up? Because they have a legit chance to win the ACC still. It's not Duke's quite yet. Well, it might be harder now with Caleb Wilson out, right? Who can step up and get North Carolina that 3 seed, that 2 seed, right? Make it a little easier for when Caleb does come back. I love Henry Visar. I think that he's been outstanding, right? He was resting last game. They didn't need him, but just the fact that he can handle the rebounding aspects that Caleb might provide while he's out is excellent. I really think it's Trimble's time, though, to step up with these last 7 games, call it in the season, if we don't see Wilson in the ACC tournament, right? Because what Caleb Wilson did this year scoring-wise, I think was a little unexpected. I think we saw North Carolina as number 2 in the ACC, but middle-pack team. What Caleb Wilson did scoring-wise rose them to a potential 4-3 seed team, right? We need Trimble to take over now that he's out. We need him to really work on his offensive game because they do have a lot of athletes surrounding him, right? They have rebounders. They have Visar to step out and hit some big shots while also, getting the board. So they have everything around him, but somebody's got to put it in. I think Trimble, this is why you came to North Carolina, right? This is why they kept you. I think that it's his time probably to step up scoring wise. Obviously some concerning things, but it's the ACC. They can work them out. So get Caleb Wilson healthy is the path for North Carolina.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. North Carolina's a fun team, man. Like that North Carolina Duke game. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. It was awesome. So the team I wanted to talk about was Miami because they're
Yeah.
really interesting. I mean, the hire we talked about was Jay Lucas, I believe, is their head
Mm-hmm.
coach, and the former Duke assistant, and they've just immediately been really, really good. They're sitting at 20-5. Trey Donaldson went here. He's averaging 15.8 points a game, 6 assists a game. So all of his numbers are kind of up. 3-point shooting a little bit down, something to note. But they've been really good, and they've been a team that's kind of flown under the radar in the ACC. They had a couple games like in the out of conference. You saw them lose to BYU. You saw them lose to Florida. And then recently they just picked up a win against an injury kind of riddled North Carolina. It was the game where Caleb actually broke his hand. So I feel like you're going to get some questions answered with this team coming up. You're playing at Virginia. You're playing against Louisville. Louisville's been red hot. Talk about a guy that's been red hot. It's Michael Brown. Holy cow, he's been
Yeah.
hot. But you're looking at Miami, and you just got guys that can really play for you. Malik Renu has been great for them. 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, shooting at 37%. Ernest Udu, 8
Mm-hmm.
rebounds a game or 9 rebounds a game. He's been a stud for them as well. They just give you a lot of length and they make it tough on you. One thing that concerns me a little bit, low 3-point shooting numbers, low free throw percentage numbers. That might be a concerning thing when you're looking at them in March. But as a team that could kind of shock you in the ACC tournament, really show up and be ready to play against these teams that they've played against all year, like that is a legitimate team. Like I might change my tune looking at them playing against a team like St. Louis or a team like Yale or someone like that. But right now, I think Miami's playing great basketball.
Yeah, I think sometimes beating a, injury-riddled North Carolina is all it takes to make the ACC championship game, right? And then you're playing your way into the tournament, into a better seed, whatever it may be for that team. So the fact that they were able to show that in the regular season, huge for Miami. And I think that their confidence is building. They're a team that was, maybe poked at as having not a great strength of schedule to start the year, but they got to 20 wins regardless, right? They had to play who was on their schedule, and they're a 20-win team. So, we can rest our heads on the fact that whatever schedule that is rolled out for them, they went ahead and won, and that's what the NCAA tournament's all about. Whatever schedule you got to go win. So I could definitely think that a couple more wins, people might start taking them seriously, but ACC tournament wouldn't say that's a bad bet. I like Louisville more right now, even though they are streaky, because they do have more losses, right? They are streaky, but they did put themselves through a tougher schedule, right? They beat Kentucky. They did play some tougher teams, and they stayed hot, right? I really, really like Michael Brown. I think that he could be someone that's dangerous in this ACC tournament, but I wouldn't want to, have to go through Miami, North Carolina, and Duke to get there. So it all matters where you fall seeding wise, right? So these last couple of games will be really big for the ACC because, they may be a low bid conference or a high bid conference based on how these top teams can close out. So we'll see.
Yeah. Who do you trust the most in the ACC? Let's say Caleb Wilson's healthy. Louisville's healthy. Everybody's healthy going into it. Who do you trust the most to compete with Duke?
That's a great question. I think that you could give props to a ton of teams. I think that, Virginia's played so well that you can never say they're going to have a bad game, which is scary. Like you said, in tournament play, they'll hang around. But in terms of climbing the ladder, as I would call it, to beat Duke, I think North Carolina is really your only shot. And I love Michael Brown. I think that Miami has some tendencies to blow up, right? But Caleb Wilson and his NBA talent is what you need to overcome an NBA roster, and that's what Duke has, right? It is. I think that they have 5 guys who should come back to college and run it back at Duke, but they're not going to, right? And it's just they're giving you the top talent in the country every single year, and you need some heavy hitters to come back at them. So I think Caleb Wilson and North Carolina, if they don't have them, obviously anyone can have a great day, but if they do have them, it becomes more of a 50-50 toss-up for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite way. I like Louisville just a little bit more, and the main reason, I love Michael Brown. He's good. He's getting his numbers up. It's fantastic. He was somebody on my draft show where I was concerned because of how much I liked him at the beginning, But the other guy on Louisville that I've just absolutely loved all year is Ryan Conwell. This guy is an absolute stud that nobody talks about. He is such a good scorer, and it's smooth. And the thing with him is it's not just scoring, it's defense. He is a ridiculously physical defender. He's all over you. He's a pest. You don't want to play him. And I've just loved this guy. The minute I watched him, I didn't even pick out Michael Brown the first time I saw him play when he dropped 40. And I was like, this is Ryan Conwell guy. This guy's really, really good. He's awesome. He's averaging around 19 points a game with a steal a game. He, I think, is the turning point for them. He can really get hot. And the one thing with Duke that a lot of people aren't talking about is their backcourt isn't the greatest in the world. They've had trouble with their backcourt. That would be one of the weaknesses you could poke at them, trying to find minutes on the right person to go. You've seen Caden Boozer a lot off the bench. You've seen Caleb Foster. They're trying to figure that out to the best of their ability. So that's something that might concern me when it comes to ACC tournament time. And you're going up against a backcourt of Michael Brown and Ryan Conwell. And then you got guys like Isaac McKinley who can come in, shoot 40% from 3. You got Holiday, I think it is, who's 42.3% from 3. And then Frew, who's awesome from 3 as well, and a really good big guy for them. This Louisville team is a legitimate threat to me. I think they're really, really good. And yes, super streaky. They have to be streaking at the right spot in this game. But also, if you look at the KenPom numbers, their net rating has stayed high. They're staying near the top of the NCAA while they've been up and down, with their shooting. So Louisville is a team that I'm starting to put my trust into that I like a lot.
Yeah, I think that beating teams by a good amount of points is huge in KenPom, and that's for a reason, right? It's how you predict people to have great seasons, and Louisville's been able to do that, right? We talk about Michigan doing that, Arizona doing that, Duke doing that. Louisville has put the pound on some teams, right? They've definitely had some times when they're shooting 50% from 3 and they will run it up on you. And that's, like you said, all you need for certain tournament wins as well. So don't hate that at all. I think out of the ACC, it's a pretty clear top 5. And after that, it's a big number 1. So it'll be interesting to see, what's going to happen come tournament time.
Yeah. And don't forget, this is a Duke team that beat them 83-52. At their place, it can go either way with Louisville. You can see the Louisville of greatness that beats NC State 118-77, and Michael Brown has 45 points. Or you can see the team that loses 83-52. So Louisville is very streaky, not a team I'd put money on, but a team I'd enjoy,
Yes, absolutely.
100%. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to get to some of the other comments. All right. Welcome back into the show. And let's switch over to the SEC. The SEC has been one of the more interesting ones, I would say. Like it kind of flip-flopped near the top. A lot of people going in was like, oh, these are the teams that are going to be it. And then conference play started and it's kind of like flipped all over the place. So talk to me about what you've seen from the SEC team so far.
Yeah, I think that you could look at it and, like you said, think it's a weaker year for the SEC because they flip flopped. But I think it just means that the middle of the SEC is more talented than in years past, right? I think that new names entering means that, okay, if I had a middle of the road to down year last year, I went to the portal, I found my guys, and now I'm competing in what was the best conference of 2024, right? So I think you got to give props to it. And I think we did this with UConn last year too, but no one seems to be giving respect to Florida, who just won it all last year, right? And we may have to be taught the lesson again once Florida goes on another run, right? Maybe they do run away with the SEC here. I don't like their team as much as I did last year, but they know how to win, right? They've got players that know how to win. They've got coaches that know how to win. So it could be, we're looking at the deepest, best conference, and we just don't know it, right? Because the Big 12 is putting up better numbers, and the Big 10 it has better, heavy hitters. So love the SEC overall, but it's very hard for me to find, who I think can make a deep run outside of Florida. So interested to see who you've been looking at, but I've got a couple maybe dark horses. Other than that, it's really hard to depict, who out of this conference is going to be the one that's going to go to Final Four.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I love what you're saying about Florida. Florida has been, since probably the start of the season, if I was looking at SEC teams, my favorite team to watch. And I love that it makes me feel good as a basketball fan that I know what I'm talking about with me saying that and them sitting at 5th in net rating in the country, and their record doesn't show it, right? They're sitting they have 6 losses. They had a lot of losses out of conference, but they, I think to me, have clearly put themselves as the main contender in the SEC. I think they're the best. Thomas Howell is one of my favorite players. He's just always in the right spots. He's doing the right things. Condon's fantastic big for them. And then their guards have really stepped up. Boogie Fland has been great, and Zaven Lee has been pretty solid as well. So looking at Florida, they're a fun team. They're really exciting to watch, and I love how they're coached. They're really well coached all the time, and they're right back near the top, 100% like you were saying. If we're looking at other teams, I think the most interesting team is Vanderbilt, because they started out so hot, undefeated for a long time, 16-0, and then they go on a losing skid, lose 3 in a row, get killed by Texas, lose to Florida in a heartbreaking fashion, and then get destroyed by Arkansas. So you're sitting there and you're like, okay, what is this team, right? And since then, they've won 5 of their last 6. So it's like, okay, they're still near the top in net rating, and everything seems okay. This team kind of reminds me a lot and this team got brought back up with all the Jerome Tang news and all that stuff, but it reminds me of that Kansas State team a little bit, where you're sitting at a small guard, Tyler Tanner, that's creating things for the team. He gets a ton of steals. He gets a ton of assists. He gets people in the right spots. Vandy's near the top in all these metrics, and you're kind of overlooking them a little bit. But I think they're a legitimate team. I mean, you got Tyler Tanner, who's averaging 18 points a game. You got Duke Miles, 16 points a game. Tyler Nickel, fantastic. You got all these guys that can really make things happen. They're a good free throw shooting team. They do the stuff the right way, So Vandy's a really interesting team where it's like, okay, it has to be put together. One of my rules in the NBA is talking about like small guards is like, okay, if you have a small guard leading you, you're probably not going to win a title. Vandy's not going to win a title. I do not think that's going to happen. But the thing with Vandy is I do feel like they're good enough and like deep enough to be able to make a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah, I think that they're, like you said, statistically, when you're looking at them, they're the team that has the pieces to make a run, right? And sometimes you got to look at the stats first and the names second, because you watch a game that Vanderbilt's playing and you really don't know, besides Tyler that you mentioned, Tyler Tanner, you really don't know who's going to be the one to step up, right? Because they have 3 bigs shooting over 50%, right? One of them may have a better game than the other, right? They are a physical defensive team, so you really can't tell it by like stardom who's going to lead this run. But you look at the stats, they do have what it takes, with other Sweet 16 Elite 8 teams to match up. So I agree that like almost on paper, I like Vanderbilt. For me, sometimes it's more about what you see. So I would lean Arkansas as that team
Okay.
that's a little more dark horse for me, right? And definitely statistics wise, you're going to need a better defense than what Arkansas is putting up. I think they're, just outside the top 40 in defense, but their offense has really come to life with this, middle of the road SEC year that we're seeing. I love Darius Acuff. I think that
Yeah.
he's tremendous. I think watching him play, I just love when your point guard's your best scorer, right? Obviously, we see those teams crash and burn sometimes, but how great is it that when, these games get tough and it really becomes a coin flip, that the guy with the ball in his hand is the best scorer that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his rise in scoring, whether it be his athleticism or his shooting that is better than I expected it to be this year, has lifted his teammates as well, right? I think that it was a two-man show at the beginning of it with him and their big
Brazil. Yeah.
Right, Brazil. But Malik Thomas has, subtly averaged 15 a game because Darius has taken so much of the defensive pressure, right? What he's able to do with his downhill drive is just bring so many people towards him in Brazil that you have to leave someone open, right? And that's Cal's offense, right? A huge point guard who can drive the lane. Like that's how he made what he did at Kentucky is always having this guy that could go full head of steam downhill. And you look at the guards in the NBA and it's all his guards, right? So
Yeah.
I think Acuff's the next version of that. Obviously, I'd rather have Vanderbilt's defense than Arkansas's offense if I had to put a team in the Sweet 16 against someone they've never seen before. But why not, right? Why not Acuff catching Florida on an off night, right? Or getting it to be the tallest point guard in his region of the bracket, right? You just never know what it's going to be. So I like Arkansas, I like Cal, but I can definitely see where Vanderbilt might be a little more sure thing to be like, okay, you guys have gotten to this point in your season, like go win 4 more games, go win 3 more games. Vanderbilt definitely has the road to do that.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because we're picking out these teams, and the teams we're leaving out are Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky, who are teams we've talked about for a long time, So talk to me about what your thoughts are on these 3 teams, or if there's just one team that kind of sticks out to you where it's like, I expected more.
Yeah, I think we talked about all 3 of those in our preseason show,
Yeah.
or our November wrap up. So it's interesting that they're kind of all off of my list, right? And yeah, I hate to say that it's just based on record, but they've faced an SEC schedule the last 2 months, and they've finished below what Vandy and Arkansas have been able to do. So it's just like without even having to watch most of the conferences, I know that the 6th best Big 12 team is going to be better than the 6th best SEC team, right? And that's where these guys are falling. So some of it is just maybe fatigue, right? If they turn it on here in the next couple of weeks, like we might change our tune because we were talking about in November how they had the pieces, but it's more of like a show me right now, right? I think of those 3 teams, I like Kentucky the most. I think they've outperformed their expectations. They really got beat up in November, right? I think they lost to someone in every conference to start, and credit to them for playing that schedule, but they really got beat up, and they've been able to respond very well. I think Otega Owa is, someone that, maybe wasn't given the task of leading an SEC team, but has done it, right? He's really shown up for his team, and it's, again, credit to their coach. I think Mark Pope is the right hire, even though it might take a little bit to get off the ground, but it's all about finding his right guys. So I like him. I like Aberdeen. Obviously, the only 2 in double digits is stressful, but that means that there's a lot more opportunity for people with minutes to step up, right? They have 7 or 8, I think 9 guys averaging over 20 minutes a game. So it's like, they've been able to win after getting beat up versus those other teams like Alabama, Tennessee, which are falling a little more in my book, right? Losing late. Kentucky's been winning late after getting beat up early. So I like them, but yeah, those 3 teams are still a question mark for me.
Yeah, it really is a question mark here. And I like what you're saying about Kentucky. The main question mark I have is like, they're a different team with Jaden Quaidens. They look awesome with Jaden Quaidens, like he's a guy that just brings energy to them and like a defensive identity. And that's the thing that I've seen with them throughout the year where it's like, they really haven't had a great defensive identity, like consistently. It hasn't really been consistent for them. Denzel Aberdeen, I love him. He's one of my favorite players. He really gets to the right spots. He was fantastic on Florida last year. Just gets people in the right spots, which is great. Colin Chandler, great shooter for them, shooting 42.7% from three. He's been fantastic. They have a couple bigs that are interesting too. Garrison is pretty solid, and Diabate is pretty good. So Kentucky's interesting. I like what you were saying there. They've just been pretty disappointing for me. They got a couple big wins against Tennessee. It seems like they just really match up well with Tennessee. And Tennessee's interesting. They beat Houston at the beginning of the year more because of their length and how they're able to kind of disrupt them. Houston's identity is disrupting you through length and disrupting you through traps. And Tennessee kind of has the athletes to compete with that, right? So Tennessee to me is the one where I'm just like, how is this team not better? Like Gillespie's awesome, averaging 18 points a game, 5 assists. Nate Ahmed is starting to play better. He's up to 18 points. His shooting numbers are getting there. He's still not the greatest. There's a lot that I want from him that he just kind of doesn't do right now, which is part of the reason he's in my teens compared to top 10. So Ahmed's really interesting. They have a lot of pieces. Like Okpara is a fantastic big for them. And he just I want him to do more. There's a lot with this team where it's just like, I just need more. So there's something where I'm like, why aren't they giving me that? And then the last team, looking at Bama a little bit, it's just kind of Phylon and then everybody else kind of get out of the way, right? Yeah. Fantastic offense. They're able to make shots at a high rate, but really, really bad defensively. Kind of like what you talked about with Arkansas. You love the eye test from them, but you want the numbers to improve. And we've seen in the past, those type of teams tend to lose early. It's just kind of how it goes. And that's why, with me, when we were looking at the Arkansas Vandy thing too, that's what made me a little concerned about Arkansas. I love Acuff. He's really turned a corner for me because I was really low on him to start, and I'm starting to be pretty high on him. We'll see where he ends up there. But I think it's really interesting looking at Bama and Arkansas and kind of their potential within it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Alabama, it's always going to be impressive to look up their shooting, and see it. But you have to just watch them on a day where the other team's matching them or they're off, right? And this year versus their Final Four year, I just don't think they have the big man play or the defense to will themselves back into the game, right? It's just Aiden Holloway needs to hit a step back three, right? That's their momentum booster. I think Tennessee and Kentucky, like you said, have more length, right? They have better defenders, especially now that Kentucky got that guy back. So I would say that we've gotten to a point where we know these teams. I wouldn't say Alabama's due for they just got cold, they'll heat up again. I think that they are going to win the games they're hitting shots, and when they get out of it, they just have a tough time battling back.
Yeah, for sure. And Alabama played a really tough strength of schedule. I feel like we just got to see a little bit more. If they were able to make an SEC tournament run, our opinion might completely change for them.
True. That conference is wide open. Yeah, it's anyone's tournament. It's 4 days of your best shooters. So I think that you're right. That could definitely give them a better seed in the tournament and spark some belief in the crowd as well. So not the end for Alabama. They're ranked 25th in the country. Definitely have some time to recover.
For sure. All right, let's move into our mid-major spotlight. We got to talk about Miami, Ohio, dude. They're incredible. They are absolutely incredible. I believe they're sitting at 25-0 right now, which is just ridiculous.
That's right. Yeah.
And easily one of the best stories in college basketball. I mean, staying undefeated this long, when's the last time this has happened? It's kind of wild.
Yeah, I think they said it was the best start for a MAC team ever, since the founding of the MAC. So it's unprecedented for this conference, right? We mid-majors, as you know well, have definitely some household names for who makes the tournament. Miami, Ohio is not one of them, right? They have a nice history with a couple Sweet 16 runs, especially when Wally Zerbiak was there in the 90s. But it hasn't been something they put together, every 5 years, every 4 years, like some other mid-majors that people might know from filling out their bracket, right? This is very new. It's very new to everybody, including people on Miami's campus. So it's super cool to see. Obviously, they're getting poked for their, low strength of schedule, but you got to play the teams in front of you, right? And if you beat all of them, can't really judge you. So I think that for Miami, right, take care of business, win the MAC, right, shut all the haters up, get the seed you deserve, and then anything can happen, right? I think that they, have shown with their scoring ability, right? Where they got 4 shooters over 40% from 3, right? You
Yeah,
love that out of a tournament team,
of course. Yep.
Clearly you can finish games because they've been winning in overtime. They beat Buffalo in overtime and then double overtime, right? They clearly can finish games. So, let's show it, right? Take it off paper and put it on that March Madness screen. You deserve it. So I really like this team. I think that Byers and Suter are, a really balanced guard format in terms of defense and offense, but can't tell you what they look like against a Big Ten team. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they perform. Interested to see like where you might rank them early in like your bracketology, or kind of who you'd want to see them face.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to see the matchup because, like, if you look at their schedule, they've played nobody. They've played absolutely nobody. So it's hard to be like, okay, this is how they're going to match up with a high major team in the first round. And it's almost like, how do you seed them? Like they're undefeated, they're MAC champion. Does that automatically give them like a 8 seed or a 9 seed? I don't know, like it's really interesting because their KenPom ranking is still so low. But that also leads to like they don't have much room for error. Like they can only lose like 1 or 2 games and they would still have to win their tournament.
Hmm.
Like even if
Yeah.
they lose one and it's in that MAC tournament and they're done, like there's arguments like that they shouldn't make it, because they haven't really had that big time win. But I agree with you. Like some of the wins that they've poured out so far in these overtime games in this overtime fashion, it's really interesting, and they have so much different ways they can score. I like their wing Elmer. He was really good, steady third scorer for them and kind of like the connector piece on that team.
Yeah.
So like yeah, I'm looking at Miami and I love some of the stuff. You had the interviews with Travis Steele, him talking about, oh, if we finish like undefeated, well, it's just some funny stuff and it's just a really cool story in college basketball. And the thing that's cool with them is like they're just they're just kind of like in the moment. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
this isn't like we've been talking about this story for like a month now and they're still going through it. They're in the moment, they're winning these games, they're slowly moving on to the next game. And those are the teams that you tend to trust. You tend to trust, and as they just keep improving. And then I listened to Steele on an interview with Rothstein, and he was like, control what you can control, and just try to peak
Hmm.
at the right time. That's what he wanted to do. So I'm really excited for Miami, Ohio. I think this is just a really, really cool mid-major story.
Yeah, I think that this can be, what happens when you have a mediocre year the year before and people don't steal your guys, right? They were 25-9, outstanding record. Travis Steele, great coach. They got him
Mhm.
back. They got their players back, right? That's big. But I do think it's also cool that they only have 3 transfers, right? 2
Yeah.
with real minutes. Like that's cool in college basketball today that you can build from recruiting. These are all Ohio guys, right?
Mhm.
And it's obviously talented guys who have won 25 plus, now 2 years in a row. It's not a knock on them to not have transfers, but that's pretty cool, especially for mid-major programs where it's like we can build this. In our conference, it allows us to build this. I think getting our mid-major spotlight, the coolest thing that we could see here, if Miami does take care of business and gets into that tournament undefeated, right? Which I think everyone thinks they will. They have UMass maybe tonight, but that's their toughest one,
Yeah.
left. It'd be really interesting to see if Miami and St. Louis lose in that tournament, right? If we see
Yeah.
a two bid A10, 2 bid MAC, that could really shift who makes the tournament. Last year we had no bid stealers. North Carolina got in at like a 500 record. This year we could really have some shakers in those 2 conferences. If you knock out a team that's just won 30 games and is a little tired, right? They're going to be in. If they finish these last couple games, they're going to be in the tournament. We could see 2 teams from the MAC. First time I feel like in a while that
Yeah.
MAC's gotten 2 teams in. So that's what's exciting to me on top of obviously rooting for Miami is what happens if we get 4 mid-majors out of nowhere that come in with multiple bids.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited with that. And obviously Gonzaga's conference always provides some, and, you'll have some other Mountain West, should be exciting down the road. But these 2 teams have a clear path to be bid stealers. And I love St. Louis and Miami. I'd put them over anybody, but kind of rooting for them to get knocked out. I'm excited to see kind of what happens. I'm rooting for the chaos.
100%. So, Asher, I mean, we got some crazy stuff coming up. We got Duke, Michigan. We got all these crazy games that are coming on this weekend. I mean, I was debating in my head like whether or not I should schedule you for next week, and I was like, it might be good to just preview this stuff for these guys a little bit. So, tell me what you're looking forward to the most coming up.
No, I'm looking forward to this week. I think that we could easily be sitting here next Tuesday and Michigan has 2 losses, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
only projected to win by 1 point in both games. Like, that's crazy. The number 1 team in the country has a battle like that in 2 straight games. So I'm looking forward to Saturday. I know there's going to be a lot of great games this week. The Big 12 has a ranked matchup, I think, every day for the next month. So like you're gonna be taken care of with them. But I'm looking forward to Saturday. We got a Final Four preview in February, something that I have not seen before. 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4, right? Michigan versus
Yeah.
Duke, an out of conference game, which you and I talked about, is probably going to be the 2 best teams in the country. Lo and behold, it is the 2 best teams in the country, net, Ken Pom, and should be AP, right?
Yeah.
Arizona, Houston, 2 versus 4 at Houston. That's going to be an incredible game. On top of that, and this is one day of college basketball. This is why I love college basketball, right? It picks up right where football leaves off. This is one day. You have UConn going to number 26 Villanova on Ken Pom's ranking, right? The Big East that no one's talking about. The UConn has to go to Villanova, who's rising, right? Someone that can knock off someone like UConn. That's a test for number 5. And then you have number 6 Iowa State going to BYU, another team that we didn't talk about, reeling from the Richie Saunders injury. They get to have number 6 at home, right? They get to get revenge on Iowa State. So Saturday is chock full of big games. I'm super excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. I think that even if the top teams lose, you can't count them out. So that's where it makes it fun, right? We're just going to see some great basketball, and then they'll be able to finish out their conferences, and we'll see where it shakes out. So outside of that, I think St. John's at UConn will always be fun, right? I think that's going to be a good game. And then I'm really looking forward to Michigan at Illinois on February 27th. I think I'm calling that the Big Ten championship in air quotes for the regular season. I think that after, a couple win losses here and there for both teams, that could really mean, the winner is whoever comes out of that game on top. So that's what I'm looking forward to, but just super excited for every day. I feel like we got a good big game every single day from here on out. So I'm pumped.
100%. 100%. Well, that's going to wrap up the show for today. Asher, thanks so much for coming on, man. These are always fun.
Of course, man. I'm excited to fill out a bracket with you next. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that's going to wrap up the show for today, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.